With that being said, so there are lawsuits coming up, and I know everyone's afraid of lawsuits, but this one is really important to me because I feel like this is something I have been thinking about and mentioning for a long time. And that is people's attitude. Attitudes need to get in check. And sorry to say this, in fucking everything. Like I'm over it. It's attitudes with everything. We need to be so much more grateful for things, but we need to be very tactful on how we talk to people. This is from like no one's rude to me, obviously, but we've had people in the brokerage in the past who have been rude. And what I mean is, I think that your attitude with everything carries into everything. So if, let's take back when I was at a team where we had a staff and we had a lot of agents coming in and out constantly. We had some people come in who had really bad attitudes, and they would be really rude to the staff. Well, I truly believe that that attitude is going to carry into how you talk in transactions. So, case in point, there is a lawsuit going on right now. Buyer gets into contract on a house. There are quite a few things that need to be repaired, so they asked for a couple things to be repaired and a credit to be given. The seller said absolutely nothing will be repaired and no credits will be given, and it was just a really sour and tough transaction because of that. Somehow they ended up meeting when they were closing the deal, and they were signing their closing documents, and the buyer asked, what the heck, why did you do that? And they said, well, we found it really rude when you guys sent in your survey after showing the house and just berated our house. And you said that the price was way too high, the condition was terrible, and you left all these notes. And they're like, what the heck? What are you talking about? We never sent any survey in. And you know how for those of you who have done this, when you show a house, especially when you use showing time to schedule your appointment, and it sends you a survey afterward and says, hey, what did your client think of the house, rate, and it has different questions that it asks. They're asking what your client thought, not what you thought, first of all. And I have had so many times where an agent is just, right, the agent fills it out what they think. And so what ended up happening was the agent filled out what they think. They thought the price was too high, the condition was terrible, they just thought it was gross and all this stuff, but their client ended up liking it. Their client submits their offer and gets the offer accepted, but the seller now is frustrated because the seller saw that survey and the agent ruined it. So ruined their ability to negotiate. So the buyer ended up suing their agent, the buyer's agent, for basically breaching, like misrepresenting them and basically kind of breaking their fiduciary responsibility because of their attitude. And I think this is so true of so many different scenarios. So including, and I'm having to check, lots of transaction coordinators. They need to get to a point where I get that, we're arguing over dates and stuff, but you need to be very cautious with your TCs about how they're communicating with the other side. And I know a lot of you use Jen Lee. Sometimes, when it comes to forms and stuff, people can be aggressive and whatever. Everything needs to be very cautious of how we talk to people. We need to be very tactful because if I'm rude, and I've had it where I've had buyers that found out that the listing agent was being really rude to me, and they were like, let's stick it to them and do this. And I thought to myself, if my buyers are wanting to be tougher on this transaction because the listing agent's rude, then that means the listing agent did not do right by their seller. And if the seller ever found out, I think that's grounds for the seller to sue their agent. And sure enough, it's happening. So I would just, anyone who watches the recording, especially, not like anyone in this call has done this, just be careful with everything, right? I'm more than willing to answer the phone call for anyone at any point in time. I think that usually when I've seen people have a bad attitude, they have a bad attitude with everything, right? They take everything for granted. They expect that we should be giving them all kinds of knick-knack stuff. And like there's a guy I finally had to say, hey, you're not welcome to join our mortgage company, because he just wanted a bunch of free things, but he also wanted to be an independent contractor. It just comes down to attitude, right? I fear with that kind of attitude that it's going to extend in everything he does. And that's what I eventually had to tell him. And he kind of received it well. But I would just be very cautious, right? I'm getting clients that, maybe they want to negotiate too much, whatever it might be. Whatever even if the agent is being super rude on the other side, you have to be careful. I mean, yes, there's a time when you need to call them out on their BS, but right, you just have to be careful. Same thing when you're walking through a house is just be respectful. Right? Don't leave the lights on if they weren't on when you first walked in the house. Don't leave blinds up if they weren't up when you first walked in the house, because that could, right? You could piss people off. My second ever listing, I'm sitting getting a haircut and I get a text from my seller that says, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, "What the heck? Oh no." And I look and he sends me a video and I open the video and this freaking agent walks in without his clients, opens the door and just leaves it open, walks to the back because they have cameras all throughout their house for some reason. Walks to the back, opens that door, just leaves it wide open. Like flies are flying in. He goes, opens up all the blinds, turns on all the lights, which was fine. Then his clients come in and they say, "Oh, is it okay if we bring our dog in? We just drove a while." And he said, "Yeah, it's fine. Their dog's running around inside." And we're seeing this all on camera. And then he leaves and he leaves all the lights on, all the windows open, all the blinds open, I mean. And it was super hot. My client was pissed. He says, "Tell me if they write an offer because I'm going to tell them that they ruined their negotiation ability by being so disrespectful and rude." So just a word of caution or word of warning, just be very careful in everything that you do, because I think people are starting to realize how much this can come back and bite you. Like I said, most people in our brokerage are not acting this way. It's just I'd rather warn everyone ahead of time. To be honest, we're all seeing it more where the listing agents are being extremely rude. And so that's why, for this recording, if anyone's watching this, check yourself, because people are getting to a point where I get that you've been around for a while, but sometimes you're ruining your seller or your buyer's ability to negotiate because of how rude you are or how unresponsive you are. And there are quite a few. I think you're going to see a lot more of these lawsuits come up where agents are being blamed because of their negligence, which is one of your requirements under ethics, and your legal requirements is not being negligent, which means you take forever to respond back to someone and now they're pissed off. Well, guess what? That ruined your client's ability to negotiate. Does anyone who's online right now have any questions about that or any comments even? No one? All right. Last thing I was going to say too is, kind of in line with that is with clients that are really big into negotiating, it's once again a big tactful thing. So there are some clients that you're going to have that just want to negotiate everything. I mean, like to a point of just being absolutely ridiculous. And you need to just communicate as much as possible. Hey, at this point, we're going to remove all contingencies because we've gotten the deal we need to get. There is no negotiating after this point because there's nothing that we have as leverage. Just make sure that you're reminding them that. Does that mean it's going to work every single time? No, but just remind them that. Same thing as when you're working with a lender you've never worked for before, it's good to kind of understand some of the loan process, because you're going to experience times when you have to call them out on their BS or explain to your client that the lender is not doing what they should be doing. Things like we're 2 days before closing and they send a closing disclosure, which has a 3 business day cool off period before the buyer can sign final documents. So on Tuesday of next week, we're also going to do a class on a couple different loan products that have come out and how to pitch them, how it works. It's more for our loan originators, but we're going to kind of talk about the loan process. I'm going to record that as well. So if anyone can make it in person, great. If you can't, there will be a recording as well.